Those getting signatures, to get the 2,000 signatures to be on the ballot, we had lots of help. Mom, do you want to raise your hand, Greta? And Liza, are you still here, Liza? Anyway, she helped as well. So we appreciate that, and some others who couldn't be here today. And those who helped for tonight setting up, my friend Jen Flynn in the back, Sheila, Stacy, I see you, Stacy Briggs, Christine Kapopoulos, Kelly Reingold is way in the back. Thank you all. And others who are not here tonight but are helping from afar. So it's really been a grassroots effort and really lots of help from many of you all and beyond our Maynard Circle. So thank you, we appreciate that. Before I turn this over to Mike for you to hear from him and his platform, I wanted to just have a couple requests. We have a list in the back of the room of the 37 towns that make up the district, which quite a lot of towns. And those of you, if you can take a look and see if you have any friends or family in that area who may want to support Mike, take a look at his materials or website, take a lawn sign, a bumper sticker, we would love that support. Because again, it's a grassroots efforts to get the word out to all of those towns. The other thing that we'll have on the back table as you're leaving is a sign-up sheet if anybody wants to be available on November 6th to hold signs at some of the precincts across the region. Again, morning or afternoon times depending on work schedules or availabilities. I know school has off, so Ethan and Jordan will be holding signs in many towns. I should also thank Jordan for baking all of the chocolate chip cookies that are over there. He was a rock star in baking all day, and Ethan for helping me with Wegmans pickup and delivery. Part of the process. So again, I will turn this over to Mike for you to hear from him about his, and Fitz. Where did they go? That was on my list, sorry. Thank you for being here and for you and your colleagues for singing. If you don't know John Fitzsimmons, he is a legend in Maynard and Concord, and we're beyond. Maynard and beyond. And we are thrilled to have him here today. So thank you all.
All right, got to put on the reading glasses. I am now of that age, which some of you may know. My uncle is probably a little different political perspective than myself, and he's concerned about being able for me to present well, counting my so if there's anybody here, I'd like you to do that at the end of the evening. But he was talking about getting someone new in politics. Yeah, someone young like you, Mike. And I was like, I'm turning 50 in a month. Anyways. I don't know that all of you know my background, so I was going to give a little quick background. Some people are wondering why I'm jumping into politics and seems kind of out of character for myself. When I was in college, I worked for Governor Dukakis. One of my friend's father had been John Kerry's right-hand person. When John Kerry went to the Senate, he was wrapped up things at the State House in the Lieutenant Governor's office. So I worked in the Office of Federal State Relations, which is a liaison between the governor and the congressional delegation. That happened to be the year that he was running for president, so we'd be at the State House during the day and we'd head over to Chauncey Street in the campaign at night. So met a lot of people, started understanding the process, how it worked, both from a kind of policy, operational perspective, as well as the campaign, that type of thing. The next summer, I worked in Washington, D.C. for Congressman Frank, one of my bosses at the State House, had connections there, and spent the summer in D.C. It was a great intern series, learned about the trading of different political favors. I remember William Gray, who was the chairman of the Budget Committee. He's from Philadelphia, and he's like, I don't have a lot of cows in my district, but the congressman from Wisconsin doesn't have a lot of subways. So you work together, you find how to find some common ground and do that, which is one of the themes of my campaign. I got in this race because of the divisiveness in politics today. I think it's stopping us from finding that common ground from each other. So whether you consider yourself red or blue, I don't think that should mean that you can't have personal relationships, you can't have discussions, you can't talk about these issues. They're important issues, and if we don't have the dialogue, we're not going to make progress in that. Speaking of those colors, you probably noticed my campaign is purple. That's to bring the red and the blue together. So that's one of the main reasons that I'm running. Running as an independent because I think that positions me better from that divisiveness standpoint. I can attack it from the outside. I can find those opportunities to find common ground. There's a lot of issues out there that directionally, as Americans, we agree 70, 80, 90%, but we may disagree about the specific implementation of it or not give it the proper hearing because it comes from the other side. So things like the economy, things like education, different aspects of the gun violence debate, there's wide consensus on a bunch of those issues, and we need to start making that progress. And I think the other thing that really struck me is, and Parkland reminded me of this, after the Sandy Hook shootings, the president gave a speech and said we can do better. And I took that very literally. In conversations in that regard, a lot of times you hear, well, if you have background checks, you do this, it's not going to solve all the problems. You're still going to have people getting shot and killed. And that's probably true. But there are different things, different situations that you can do that can make it better, that we can move the ball forward, we can make that iterative progress. And I think we need to do more of that. But if we can't find the collaboration, we can't work together, those things are going to be pretty difficult. A lot of you probably know I was a rugby player, guided a lot of my youth. I spent many years up there with my beautiful wife, Michelle. Thank you for all the work tonight and all the support in the campaign. Rugby taught me a number of lessons. One of them is that you're part of a bigger community. We had a rugby club out in Worcester that we were all very excited about, we're all very supportive of, but at the end of the game, you went and you had a party, a drink up with the other team, you made friends that a lot of times became lifelong friends. With the advent of social media, I'm in touch with a lot of people that I played against, not just the people I played with. You go overseas, I spent 4 months in Scotland, I have friends over in Scotland. Rugby has a tradition of tours, you go and you meet people. So the reason I mention that is I find that when we're together with our tribe, everybody's very supportive and everybody's close, regardless of differences that if somebody is not in your tribe, you may not be as supportive of. So I'd like to have people kind of think in that context and look at the bigger picture in that regard. So that's one of the things that rugby has brought. Another thing you'll notice on my signs is with you. In rugby we have a saying, with you when you're coming in support of your teammate. There's 15 people on the field, it gets messy, you're moving the ball forward, you're tackling. When you're passing it backwards, so you don't always get to see who you're going towards. So you're yelling with you. And that's what I'm committing to be in this campaign, and as your congressperson if elected, is to be with you, and I'm hoping we're all with each other. So that's the genesis behind that saying in the campaign. And rugby also played another role with me getting involved in this race. Last summer I read the book Playing the Enemy, which is about the 1995 World Cup and Nelson Mandela in South Africa and kind of the unification of a nation. I read it because it was a rugby book, but within it, it taught a story of how Mandela reintegrated with the country and his strategy of using rugby as a unifying force. So traditionally the Springboks were hated by the majority of South Africans because it was the elitist sport. And Mandela realized that the pride that the white power structure had there was something that was real and could be tapped into, and if the team itself could be a symbol of the country, then you could make progress, you could have some common goal, work together for unity. So if Nelson Mandela can do that in a situation where he's been jailed for 30 years, where like some of the worst oppression in the world, I think as Americans we can try to find that common ground and move forward. So that's really one of the things that's been kind of a driving factor behind that. And then lastly, I think to get to those points, we need some structural changes in the system. I think we need to reverse Citizens United. There's a lot of money in the system that is just coloring it way too much special interest, adds to the divisiveness. Redistricting needs to be nonpartisan. There's something called ranked choice voting. I don't know how many of you have been following the race closely. This past week, the Democrats are 52 votes apart. Dan Coe and Lori Trahan are the candidates in this race. And something like ranked choice voting could have saved us time, could have saved us expense because the recount's going to cost money. And basically what that is you take all the candidates or the options in that election and you rank them. And what that does is a couple things. It ensures that whoever has the last vote, it kind of bubbles up. You'll have 50% majority, and that will kind of prompt a little bit more consensus. And then secondly, as candidates, you have an incentive to find common ground with the other candidates, because if you want to be the second choice for somebody, you're not going to belittle them in front of their supporters. You're going to say, hey, like, I agree with this point of that person. And then lastly, as a voter, you're looking at more people. You're not just looking at your candidate. A lot of times you'll go in, you'll have familiarity with someone and say, hey, that's my guy. But you'll be able to talk to those other people and do that. So there's these different things that we can do that can make the system more inclusive in that regard. And then it will bring us to the issues that matter once we break down those barriers. I have experience in healthcare. I'm an IT professional in that area. It was in workers' compensation, so I understand the changing dynamics of the workforce. Did a lot of work with machine learning, artificial intelligence. I understand how that's disrupting the world of work today, the on-demand or gig economy. There's also, we have to consider how things like those algorithms you hear about are made. There can be bias in those, either intentional or unintentional. Those are things that we need to kind of think through as we go through this process. So thank you all very much for coming here. I'm very happy to do this in Maynard. I love Maynard. I think it's a wonderful microcosm where it is a super supportive community. We all get behind each other, and hopefully we can kind of expand that out throughout the district and throughout the country and start moving stuff forward. So thank you, and enjoy the rest of the evening.